Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News, your first ever in the new year. I hope you all had a sensational end to your 2024, and we're all on a trajectory to have a phenomenal 2025. But without any further ado, let us go ahead and jump on into the first official of 2025. And that's actually going to be coming from no other than Sir Joseph Abercrombie himself, because he released a blog post to his fans where he not only celebrated turning 50, happy birthday Joe Abercrombie, but gave a substantial update on the release of the sequel to his upcoming release, The Devils, which is due out in May, and it seems that we will be fed once again from Lord Grimdark not too long after that, specifically saying, "My hope is in the next month or so, I'll be able to sharpen up the second part, rewrite the first a bit, confer with my editors on what I've got, then plan the last part. And by that point, I'll hopefully feel more confident about the whole thing and can finish up a first draft relatively quickly. That should give me a few good months to edit and revise, with a view of largely being finished towards the end of 2025 and publishing August/September of 2026. We shall see." And absolutely, I do plan on getting a review of The Devils here for you on the channel, either like the day it's released or just a few days beforehand. I'm sorry I haven't got it like super early done like some other reviewers have. It's mainly just coming down to the fact that I have a gargantuan, even bigger than normal backlog on my TBR. I really want to get you a series review of the Dandelion Dynasty. I want to get into Mushroom Blues, and there's a collaborative project between me and another creator that I also need to read a book for, all by the end of January. And people are voting on my Patreon right now to pick a book for me to read before the end of January. So it's going to be a bit of a busy month, and not to tangent within a tangent, but I've also been watching Pantheon by Ken Liu, who did obviously Dandelion Dynasty, and I really want to do a review of that, but I also want to do a review of Dan to Dan. Let me know which you would prefer to see here on the channel, get a bit of like a review from me, Dan to Dan or Pantheon. Both worth discussion, though I could even fold the Pantheon review into like a whole just Ken Liu deep dive that I turned the Dandelion Dynasty review into, because the guy, I have thoughts. Anyway, let's continue on. The Devils is possibly my most anticipated release of this entire year, and if you've forgotten or have not heard what it's about, it is not a continuation of the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie, but instead is pitched as Brother Diaz has been summoned to the Sacred City, where he is certain accommodation and grand holy assignment awaits him, but his new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters, and the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous end. And just across the board, that seems to be playing into Joe Abercrombie's strengths, so yeah, that's why I'm thrilled to be getting yet another new series from the Lord of Grimdark. Next book news. And that is going to be from Will Wight, who has reminded us all that today, if you are watching this video, it's out. Another entry in the Cradle series is dropping, and that would be Threshold Stories from Cradle, specifically saying tomorrow is the day Threshold Stories from Cradle releases to the world. Start off 2025 right by reuniting with the Cradle gang.
Cradle, 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 Cradle. Spent the race on new book. My book. Hard Magic Systems.
I'm not even sorry.
If you pre-ordered the ebook, you should be able to access it at midnight, your Amazon time zone. Audiobook generally releases at 3 a.m. EST. Unfortunately, we have no control over release time, so these are more like expected targets rather than a specific rule. And yes, that is something that if you are self-publishing, you need to be cognizant of. I've learned that mistake myself the hard way. I had platforms dropping my book like 10 p.m. the day before it was supposed to go live, and then like 5 p.m. the day after. You have to look into when everyone does their drops on all the different platforms and try and get them to release as close as possible. Self-publishing, it really is death by 1,000 cuts after writing your book. But for the Cradle fans, yes, right now, you're being fed, you got something to read, although I believe this is not like a technical sequel, but instead kind of like an interquel, at least from what I'm seeing about it phrased. I've not caught up on Cradle, only read the first 2 books. But in the final piece of like hardcore book news, because this is like the lighter time of news for the publishing space in general, we also had an art reveal from the Broken Binding when it comes to their special edition that they are working on for Hyperion, with art from Raymond Swanland. We got to see 2 interior illustrations and a front end paper. The front end paper in color here, while the interior illustrations are in black and white. I really dig this art. The style, I'll need to see more in the context of like the full book of their version of Hyperion to see if it works. I love Hyperion Cantos. If you have not consumed the series, structurally, I'm not the first person to say this, very similar to the Canterbury Tales, but I would say better. I don't know if that's a controversial thing to say or not. I love Hyperion, and I've experienced the Canterbury Tales. Also, as one of like the best creation concept entities of science fiction, definitely a must read for hardcore fans by Dan Simmons. Put it on your TBR, and I guess if you want to start off with a special edition, wait for the Broken Bindings version. But that is not the last major name in the sci-fi space we're going to be talking about today, because we have seen rumors bloom into reports that WB is planning on continuing their film adaptations of the Dune franchise beyond Dune 3. Though it seems unlikely that Denis Villeneuve will be returning for a 4th film and someone else will be taking over the franchise. This news coincides with continued rumors that there could be an additional Dune show coming out alongside Sisterhood. And it's too early, of course, to know if this is going to turn onto a full-on milk it till it bleeds situation, or these will just be a absolutely quality continued imagining of Frank Herbert's classic. It's very scary to see a director change, obviously, in the middle of a franchise, especially going from Denis Villeneuve to anybody else. That being said, though, without getting into spoilers, how the series is structured and broken down, switching from 3 to 4 isn't like a horrible spot to change if you have to, assuming it stays on track with how it is currently for adapting the Dune story.
I'm not gonna lie, the more that I sit with this story late at night editing this video, the more it's like, Denis Villeneuve made Dune what it is now. Don't do it without him. But I get money got a money, and there's like a good director could come in, but it's his Dune. So do like, I don't know. Ugh.
But the only thing I really care about and take away at this point for the whole franchise is that Dune 3 is my most anticipated film of 2025 still, and I cannot wait to consume it. But that is not where the big name in the sci-fi fantasy space getting adapted news ends, though, because we also had a release date confirmed for Greta Gerwig's adaptation of Narnia, coming straight to Netflix, which acquired the rights to develop the movies in 2018 for a reported $250 million. And we'll see if that purchase is going to have some immediate benefits for Netflix as early as December of 2026. And that time frame means it'll be in the ballpark of possibly HBO's reimagining of Harry Potter, and both of these series are in weird states for me in terms of how they potentially could be received by audiences. Focusing on Narnia, though, Greta Gerwig is an absolutely incredible director, and I have been in love with many of her projects, and I think the diversity to her catalog is absolutely a strength to potentially adapting a fantasy epic like Narnia. But Narnia is just one, not my cup of tea entirely. But on top of that, something that I think is surprisingly difficult to bring to the screen. The original movies that we all saw as kids, I imagine if you're watching my channel, you're in that age range, were solid enough. But the landscape for fantasy filmmaking now is vastly different, and how Narnia holds up in 2024 with Gerwig behind it, we could see something that is very loyal to the source material or twisted and reimagined to be more reflective of modern views through a story that is deeply steeped in Christianity. But I'm a big enough fan of her that if I hear she's twisting it and doing something a bit different, it could be hard as like a fantasy purist to swallow that pill, but I try to judge every adaptation not only as an adaptation, but does it stand on its own as just entertaining material? And if it manages to do that as well, absolutely that'll be worth discussion. You should know though, as fans, people involved in the project seem to be indicating it could be more toward the latter option, calling it a very new take and all about rock and roll, which that'll be a new take. I mean, there have been successful fantasy sci-fi adaptations from the past that kind of look at source material and entirely do their own thing, and they end up being something worth discussing for being inspired but reinterpretation. Starship Troopers comes to mind. So will this be Greta Gerwig's Starship Troopers? I don't know how we got here.
I'm doing my part.
But quickly, before we get into some absurd news, a quick word from today's sponsor. And since we're starting off this new year with a bit of a combustion, it's important to maintain healthy habits. Some of you may have seen that I've been taking Groones these last few months, and I have to say, they've made it easy to stick to it. Because you can just toss them in your bag and eat them whenever the craving strikes, and it will, because they actually taste pretty damn good. Groones are a convenient, comprehensive formula packed into 8 gummies a day. This is not a multivitamin, a greens gummy, or a probiotic. It's all of those things and then some at a fraction of the price. And the ingredients are here to help boost the immunity throughout the cold and flu season. Groones contains 100% of your daily needs for safe vitamins and 25% of your daily needs for certain minerals. Make sure you're not ingesting over the suggested amount. And the reason it's 8 gummies is you can't fit the proper balance and everything into just one. So that way you get a whole pack, like you're a kid again, and it's gushers. Most multivitamins contain just like 7 ingredients. Groones is throwing hands with over 20 vitamins and minerals and over 60 whole food ingredients. And they taste even better while they're 52% off. So whether you're looking to help with nails, thicker hair, your skin, or for me, personally, gut health, Groones wants you to start the year off right. So just click the link down below to get started. Which is some quickie news because a very well-earned Golden Globe was given to Colin Farrell for his portrayal of the Penguin, which continues to add to the awards and accolades in terms of acting that the roster of Batman villains have received throughout their history. It's insanely well-earned. I will add here that if you just like crime dramas, the Penguin is borderline like must-watch material. Highly recommend it. Now, next news, which is going to be some heartbreaking news, audience, and I'm so sorry to be the bearer of this, but apparently Perry, the miniature donkey who served as a model for Donkey and Shrek, has passed away at the age of 30. And I think we can all take a moment of silence for the donkey who was so incredible. He inspired the donkey that canonically banged a dragon. Rest in peace. But if, like myself, you are a fan of the adaptations of R.L. Stine's Fear Street, you should be excited to hear that we are getting even more Fear Street movies. That's right. While talking about his Disney Plus Goosebumps adaptation, R.L. Stine casually mentioned that Netflix will be getting another trilogy of the Fear Street movies, which I had to double check this while reading this article and do a little bit of deep dive into R.L. Stine's catalog. I knew that there were a metric ton of Goosebumps books, but did you know there are also a metric ton of Fear Street books? Wow. To be fair, Stine has even gone on record saying he has not written every single book in the series. He does concepts and like pass-throughs and everything, but there are additional people contributing to the Goosebumps and Fear Street universe, for sure. All of that aside though, I actually really like the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix because to me it filled a void in horror that I think does need to continue to be fed. I remember being in the age range that those films were absolutely made for, staying up late with friends and scaring the shit out of ourselves, and that's an integral part of childhood that I believe in. So we need to keep putting out new movies to feed teenagers to scar themselves with at too young of an age so that they're properly jaded to survive the modern world. Am I wrong? I don't know. I'm just kind of talking. Next news. But this takes me to some quickie news. If you are an Attack on Titan fan and doubted whether Studio Eclipse was actually going to be releasing that big final reinterpretation of the end project they've been talking about for so long, well, it officially has a release date. January 15th, it seems Studio Eclipse will be dropping Attack on Titan Requiem. And I have no idea how to feel about this because I've covered it in the past. People were mad that I was like covering it. Then I came back and was like, oh yeah, I see why some people are upset. And then people were like upset with me for being like open to understanding why some people were upset. And now I don't know. I love anime fans. They're great. There's so many opinions on everything always in all angles, and it's hard to navigate. But my genuine thoughts are, I don't know, I might watch it if I kind of have the time, but there's a lot of stuff to watch in the anime space, and I'd rather like get to solo leveling, so. But in a story no one can be angry at, not a person. If you're angry right now, put it out, because this is just lovely. Have you wanted to use the Doom world, the experience of the original Doom, to just enjoy some art? Well, that's now possible, because it seems that Doom has been turned into a way to tour a museum. If you want an example of what I'm talking about, here's a clip. And I think this officially means that there is a version of Doom that is an educational game, because you're learning about art while you do this. So, put it in schools.
You bet you won't.
And then for those of you who were wondering whether or not Squid Game Season 2 would have the same gas in the tank that Season 1 managed to have in terms of capturing audiences, well, Season 2 was the first ever show to chart at #1 in every single country. And perhaps this speaks to a growing unrest between the class divide universally throughout the world. Perhaps this is indicative of a wider cultural change where through the internet and communication and transparency with pay and numbers, more and more people are beginning to understand just how gross the wealth divide has become throughout the world. And perhaps, I think it's more just people like the premise of surviving the bloody games, probably, and that's why. Though, I really hope for the former. And in a last-minute fantasy news update, we have had 2 later in the day stories drop. Hi, it's 10 p.m. now.
And that is not the time.
The first of which is that we have a confirmed release date for The Last of Us Season 2, which will come out April 11th. And with that date, we had a bit of a new trailer drop that I actually quite liked. I really enjoyed Season 1, and I know trailers are lies, but trailer making is also a marketing art form, and this one was pretty intense. A lot of little quick clips that were certainly hinting at stuff I'm aware of from the game, and also things I couldn't quite place. The flare throw at the end, though, good homage. Good homage. And then finally, the last story that dropped later in the day, we also have had it confirmed that a Ghosts of Tsushima anime is in the works with a director who worked on the pretty well-received Star Wars Visions, Tokunobu Mizuno. If you have not played the Ghost of Tsushima game, but you are curious what this may be about, it is an action-adventure game in a Souls-like style where you play as a samurai fighting against the first Mongol invasion. But it is historical fiction. While the setting is real, the story within the game is not. So for those of you who have played the game, are you excited to hear a show is in the work? And for those of you that haven't, do you want to check it out and get your blood pressure higher? It'll do that. And then yeah, the more I've sat on it, just Dune without Denis Villeneuve. It'd be like getting...
Now is not the time to tell us.
Forget all that, because I'm here to tell you that Helldivers 2, yes 2, is reportedly being adapted into a movie by Sony. Who they're going to get involved to be on the creative team for this, I have no idea. What vibe it'll be, I could not tell you, though it's kind of fitting that it's 2 because Starship Troopers exists. And I hope they lean into that joke. Come on, you wait, you wanna live forever! And then finally, in the last piece of news I want to cover today, the Sony Pictures CEO has said that Madam Web and Craven the Hunter were not treated fairly by critics, and that is why they bombed. And it's nice that every now and then, speaking of divide, the people at the top in these companies just give us all a friendly reminder of how out of touch they are. Buddy, they didn't flop because critics hated it. They flopped because they were shit, and even the actors involved have come out and like made fun of them. My guy. But this interview does include quotes from Tony Vincignero where he says things like, I still don't understand because the film is not a bad film.
I can see the future. Oh, what the hell? She didn't see that coming?
Madam Web underperformed in the theaters because the press just crucified it. It was not a bad film, and it did great on Netflix. For some reason, the press decided that they didn't want us making these films out of Craven and Madam Web, and the critics destroyed them. They also did it with Venom, but the audience loved Venom, and made Venom a massive hit. These are not terrible films. They were just destroyed by the critics in the press for some reason. Okay, first of all, the comparison to Venom, not apt, because that is starring a different person from different years and had like a trilogy where, yes, the last one did fall off along the same lines. But, my guy, there's not like a cabal of movie critics that come together to decide, ooh, we're gonna hate this movie and destroy the chance of Sony to make money. That's not how anything works. And something doing well on Netflix is not indicative of quality in any way, shape, or form, period. There's horrible dog shit stuff that people agree does well on Netflix because it's just dumb brain candy and you turn it on in the background while you cook and that's fine. Or just because it's kind of being talked about a lot, even in a negative sense. So people want to know what's going on. And so they'll check it out on Netflix. I know that sometimes these people know like what they're saying is wrong and they're just trying to save face or, you know, get shareholders to be happier with them. But the pivoting to try and put it on the shoulders of critics and act like critics did some kind of coming together to crap on your duology of dung piles is so transparently stupid. I wouldn't even think it would work for shareholders and stuff like that. It would just be even worse because it's like, okay, and you're coming out of touch. And now it sounds like you won't be pivoting to do better than a movie where you like ADR'd most of the villain's lines. Ew.
I didn't know we'd be targeting teenagers.
They're teenagers now, but in the future, they have powers, and they will try to destroy me.
It comes across like you're trying to like dunk on us with how out of touch you are. Like, oh, you think my product's bad? You have a cabal. Ugh. What?
What are you even talking about?
But this has just been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And if you want to submit stories for us to cover next week, go ahead and join the Discord server down below. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.